Born September 13th, 1925, and I was the first of the twins. My brother came 10 minutes later.
Really? George.
So, yeah, and born in Battle Creek, Michigan.
That explains why you went to state.
Right, yeah.
And what was life like then and there?
Well, it's the story I get, Charlie, is that the doctor came to the house, and I think we were born at home, which was not unusual at the time.
Yeah.
And but I don't have much to say other than that.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Michigan?
Grew up in Michigan. Depression came along shortly after, and we did a lot of moving in the neighborhood. Neighbors would move into our house and we'd move into their house. It was that type of thing. Things were that difficult.
And that just depended on who was doing all right at the time? Or?
Everybody, seemingly, everybody was in the same situation. And as I recall, the wealthiest guy in the neighborhood was the postman.
Really?
Yeah, the guy that had the government job and had a continuous income, you know.
I guess that makes sense.
And but that's just kind of the way things were, and
Yeah.
everybody got along because we were all in the same situation.
And you were going to school through that? Or?
Well, yeah, when we started kindergarten, and my brother and I flunked out of kindergarten because of the measles and the chicken pox and things.
Really?
And we ended up being half-year students all the way through high school because we flunked out the first half year of kindergarten.
Wow.
These are not really interesting
Are you kidding?
points.
That's hilarious. I've never heard of someone who's flunked out of kindergarten. But I guess it wasn't really your fault. And do you have any recollection of like the politics during that time, or did you really care?
I can recall that when Roosevelt was elected, I think my mother voted for him and my dad voted against him. And that was the first election, and I think after that my mother never voted for him again.
Really?
I mean, but Dad was pretty much a Republican, and my mother was a little more flexible.
Yeah.
Politically, you know.
I guess we think of Roosevelt as kind of one of the great presidents at this point.
Well, he got us out of the Depression. I mean,
Yeah.
and those are tremendous problems. And right or wrong, whether you agree or not agree, he did get us out of a depression. It took years. I mean,
Yeah.
but
And you think it was more him than the onset of World War II?
good question, Charlie. I can't evaluate that too much. I mean, really, there's a lot of thought there that maybe he got us in the war to get us out of the
Yeah.
situation the country was in, you know.
Yeah.
But I can't really evaluate that.
Fair enough. So, when did you start becoming aware of like Nazi Party and what they were doing and the Japanese expansion?
You know, I knew very little about it until the actual war started.
Really?
And of course, that the big thing was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And that's when people woke up, when our country woke up to the situation that we were in.
Yeah.
And so, and then shortly after that, we went to war, and the draft started, and started drafting the, you know.
And were you in college at that point?
No, I was in high school. Let's see, war started in 41.
Yeah, so I guess you were 16?
Yeah, 16. And when the war started, they had blackouts. Everybody was concerned about the possibility of planes coming over and
Really?
bombing. Yeah, and I got a job at the Weston Biscuit Company when I was in high school, and they worked at night. I mean, and I had a afternoon shift, 3 to 11, and we used to have blackouts.
How do you work during
Yeah, you'd have, and this was all in concern about the possibility of, planes coming over and being bombed. I mean,
I assume they were concerned about Japanese, not German?
I'm not sure which it was, to tell you the truth. I think it was probably more German.
Wow. I guess I would have thought that even back then they would have felt fairly confident in knowing that they would have warning if...
Well, we were very concerned about the German being, being German immigrants.
Oh, yeah.
And we were concerned about the local Germans even
I see.
being involved. I mean, that's how critical or how the thinking went. Everybody was uptight about a lot of things.
And certainly, I guess that manifested itself in the Japanese internment.
Right. So that's...
Well, how did you end up getting involved?
Well, of course, when the war started, let's see, that's 41.
They wouldn't let you join until you were 18, right? Or...
Right. I tried to join the Air Force and passed the test for pilot training, and but then I was on the physical. I'm colorblind.
Oh, really?
So that took me out of that program.
Oh, man.
So then I tried for the Army Specialized Training Program, which is a college program, and had papers to go into college. I thought I was going to go to college, and when I went to the draft board, I chose the Army over. I could have gone Navy.
Yeah.
But I chose the Army because I thought I had these papers, and
Yeah.
as soon as, about a month after what was being drafted, they came out and canceled that program.
Really?
So I went directly into infantry replacement training.
So you didn't have an option?
No, even though I had these papers, the program was taken out because of the problems they were by then having in Africa and Europe. The war had started in Europe by that time.
And they needed people.
And they needed, and we all went infantry replacement.
I guess that's just because losses were in that.
That was
area.
the conditions of the war at the time, yeah.
So that was 43?
That was 43 when I was drafted. I actually went into let's see. Yeah, I was drafted in, I was drafted in 43. I think I went into the service in March of 44. And went overseas in October of 44.
So you had half a year of training?
Roughly, they call it 17 weeks of basic training, and then they didn't send, they had a policy of not sending 18-year-olds into combat. So I was sent to extra training to Camp Robinson, Texas, in preparation to going overseas, and then the 14th Armored had trained for 2 years in Kentucky, Tennessee, at Camp Robinson. I think I said the wrong camp going to Texas. That was...
Oh, so you went to the camp with the 14th Armored?
Yeah, 14th Armored, which was, I had 2 years of training in the States, and they were ready to go overseas.
So you came into their division as a replacement?
No, well, not as a replacement. I came into them, went to the 14th just before they went overseas.
I see.
And just about a month before, in fact.
Wow.
So I was 19 in September, and in October, the 14th Armored landed in Marseille, France. That was the first troops that had landed at Marseille, and we fought up through the southern France,
Yes.
through the Vosges Mountains and so forth, up to where we met Patton's Third Army.
I see. So you weren't under control of Patton when you landed?
No, we were Patch. Patch was general of the 7th Army, and we fought up through southern France and then met Patton's Third Army, which was, by that time they were east of Paris, going straight across east through France. And of course, that was the big action. Patton was hell-bent for election type of general. That's
Really?
yeah, and anything went. Men were expendable to save the equipment.
Really?
Type of general.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you know, just an old saying about the guy.
Yeah.
But he, by the time we hit the war situation, it was moving pretty fast, and to eliminate the Reich and so forth, and
Yeah.
and then the big Hitler tried a last-ditch movement, you might say.
The Battle of the Bulge.
Battle of the Bulge, and that was a big thing, division-wise, armor-wise, casualty-wise.
Yeah. It was somewhat easier up until that point, or?
It was, you were always in combat, and we had bad situations, but they didn't have the counter force. The Germans didn't have the counter force.
And so they were always falling back.
They were falling back. There was always opposition, but it wasn't the type of opposition that we met in the Battle of the Bulge, where they threw everything in, and it was the last straw situation for Hitler, really.
Yeah. From what I understand, the Battle of the Bulge was north of where you were, and then what you were involved in was Hitler trying to take the pressure off of that by starting another.
It was north of where we started, but it was, no, the Battle of the Bulge was really right in direct line with the Third Army, which
Okay.
was Patton's Third Army.
Okay.
And that was mostly east-west movement.
Okay. And you,
Montgomery, it was general north of Patton. Bradley was north and Montgomery was north.
Okay.
Patch was 7th Army south.
So
Yeah.
you were in the middle.
Yeah, we were pretty much in the middle.
And from what I understand reading your division's history, you got a Silver Star in the beginning of that?
Bronze Star.
Bronze Star. Can you tell me, do you recall what that was for and
Well,
the situation around it?
that was on New Year's Day, 45, New Year's Day 45, and that's, we'd been in this town roughly a week, just stabilizing the front, so-called. By that time, can't think of the, well, the 101st Airborne was surrounded
Bastogne?
in Bastogne. That's the word I was trying to think of, Charlie. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, at Bastogne, they were surrounded, and this is all part of the action right there at the front.
Yeah.
And so this was widespread. I mean, the Battle of the Bulge was widespread north to south along,
Yeah.
and when they, by January 1st of 45, the Battle of the Bulge had been going on for some time, but I say sometime, I'm not sure, a couple weeks or a month, whatever, I don't know. That's another thing, Charlie, when you're in combat or in the war, you don't know what's going on. You have no idea. You're not up on anything.
And does that even matter to you in those situations?
Well, no, you try to exist day to day.
Yeah.
And you don't know what the overall situation is at all. Have no idea.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. And so anyway, on this situation at Vanstein was the town that we were at.
Yeah.
And we were totally overrun. We lost our machine gun platoon, for instance, has 3 half tracks and about roughly 35 men at full complement, at full strength. And we lost all 3 half tracks. We lost, I think, a day or two later, 3. There were only about 10 of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
did things get better after that point? Were you?
well, we were really out of commission for a month after that, getting new equipment and reorganizing, you know.
Yeah. And was that when you had trouble with your feet?
No, trouble with my feet. That was in January, and the war was coming to an end, so-called, by April, May. And no, I kept going until practically the war was over. And then, well, in fact, I think the war was over. But by that time, there was, I can recall, they had burials for the Jews that were all eliminated by hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And they took the bodies around to these towns and had burials just to keep that in the minds of what developed and what happened to the local people. And at that time, my feet were, I was having trouble walking somewhat, and so shortly after that, I went to a hospital after this burial. I remember that because they sent us all out to bring all the local people into the burial.
Yeah.
And I had trouble walking. So I just stood down there and made everybody look into the open boxes with these bodies and so forth.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I went to the hospital for 40 days.
Oh my goodness.
And in that time, the war had come to an end. It was that, and the 14th Armored had trained for 2 years in the States before we went overseas. And we all were awarded points for discharge. And it was all based on time in the service and medals and the time overseas and this and that. But the 14th Armored, all the original 14th Armored people had more points than I had because they trained for 2 years.
Yeah.
And my point is at that time, I went to the hospital. In that 40 days, the 14th Armored was sent home. And when they send a unit home, they mixed up everybody. I mean,
Right.
a unit would come home and it was all based on points. In other words, all the guys from other units that had so many points were sent to the 14th and they came home. Well, consequently, I was sent to an anti-aircraft outfit to finish my time in Europe, just because I didn't have the number of points that the unit had, the 14th had, when they came home.
So you probably didn't have a whole lot to do at that point.
Well, the point is, if they all came home and the guys I knew, I didn't see again.
Really? And have you developed, how was getting into this unit that had trained together for 2 years?
Well, it's amazing to me how good the personnel was.
Really?
Yeah. They, and these, the unit as a whole is really well trained. It's and they're highly qualified people. The sergeants right on up. I don't know, take a minute here.
Sure. Stuff anyway.
Uh,
Did you keep in contact with anyone from the 14th?
After I got out, I kept in contact with one staff sergeant that was, his background was a milkman from Los Angeles. And of course, they were all somewhat older people, older guys than I were.
Yeah.
Than I was. And they were it's hard to describe, Charlie.
I can imagine.
I don't know. It's
That's fine.
yeah. It's
Do you have any memories from that time that have stood out for you that you'd be okay with sharing, or?
Can't really get into that, Charlie.
Okay.
It's very difficult to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
And it's I think the most that I could say is that I think combat and things made me pretty independent in my thinking of taking care of myself.
Yeah. Fair enough. What was Germany like after the war and towards the end?
Well,
of
of course, it was totally, all the major towns were just demolished. I mean, Munich, they were all just rubble, just totally rubble.
Yeah.
And the German people are like you and I. I mean, once you get to know the people, the average German citizen is an average citizen. And that's what makes war so ridiculous.
Yeah.
You get to know them. You don't know them in detail, but I mean, you see they're just good, solid citizens. That, in most respects, how you get carried away and behind a leader like Hitler is hard to understand.
Yeah.
But he had the Hitler Jugend, that's the young one, totally convinced that he was a great guy. He formed camps for him, gave them privileges that they never had before, and he thought he was going to develop a super race, and he had camps to do this.
Did you encounter these camps?
Yeah. not encounter the camps. We encountered people and kids that had been in the camps. And they took the prime girls and put them in the camps with the SS troops. And they tried to develop a super race in that respect. And they had these kids, good kids. We used to give them food because they'd come around the mess halls and going through the cans looking for food, you know. And you talk to these people, and it was unbelievable.
Really?
But they were all behind him.
Really?
But the war itself, Charlie, you can't put into words. You can't explain things to where people understand what the situation was.
Yeah.
And I just give you for instance. When we first hit Germany, kids and women were shooting out of windows in towns at us. And we gave the order, you'd get a town crier to walk down the middle of the street, see all the power and tell everything's out anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you'd get a town crier to go down and warn everybody, no more shooting. You can't shoot at women and kids, you can't. So they'd warn them, and we told them that if they did any more, that we were going to burn the houses down. Well, we spent the night in this town and get ready to leave in the morning and pull out in half tracks and things, and they start shooting at you. So the order went out. In the armored division, each unit carries a incendiary grenade to burn your own equipment in case you get caught. So each armored vehicle has got a incendiary grenade, and they start shooting at you. So we burnt the whole town out. I mean, it sounds ridiculous.
Well, I guess that was the
but
best you could do.
It only happened once.
Really?
I mean, that was right after we hit Germany.
Okay, so
Yeah.
word got ahead of you.
Yeah. I mean, the point is, it's very difficult to put things in the right perspective.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of where my own interest in history partly comes from. Just trying to understand things like that are very difficult too.
It is. But we had, Charlie, before the Battle of the Bulge, you had situations all the time. It wasn't as severe in general or as long as general as the Battle of the Bulge, but you're in constant combat all the time.
Yeah.
And for instance, I was sent to the 14th Armored after they'd trained, like I told you. But when we got overseas and got in the half track, Sergeant says we had a driver, A.T. Johnson was his name.
Yeah.
And he drove the half track, and Fergie said anybody else can drive the track. He wanted a driver, assistant driver. Okay, and I said, I can. And he said, have you ever driven one? I said, no. But Dad had coal trucks.
Yeah.
And you had the double clutch. You know what double clutching is?
No, I don't actually.
All right. When on big trucks back then and things, when you shifted, you push the clutch in and you take it out of the gear that you were in.
Yeah.
And so you push the clutch down and push it out of gear, and then you let the clutch out again, and then you push it in again to put it back into gear.
I see.
And they call that double clutching. Well, I'd noticed that Johnson was double clutching all the time, driving the track, see. So I felt I could drive it. So first chance we got, a few days later, why, he had me driving, and I drove it.
And you had no trouble with it?
Well, I didn't have trouble with driving except the steering on a half track. Mm-hmm. When you come to a corner, you start turning way before you get to the corner, or you're never going to make it.
Really?
With the track behind you. It doesn't steer the same. But my point is, we got caught on the road one time where they had the road was zeroed in with 88s, you know.
Yeah.
You know what 88s are.
Yeah.
Well, we were, and it was dark, and we got caught on the road, and it was all mud on the sides and everything. So they gave the order to unload and things and get the track, turn the tracks around and get them out. So everybody bailed out and hit the ditches and things. And we got turned around, we started out, and these 88s, I was on the 50 caliber, and Johnson was driving. The 50 caliber is the open turret gun on the half track.
Were you actually shooting at things? You couldn't see anything at that point, right?
Well, I'm on it. Yeah, I'm on it in case. You know, that's the position I was in. And
so you had to stay in.
No, but I kept ducking like this, you know. And Johnson said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "They're just missing us." And these 88s were going by and just missing. And finally, one hit us.
Really?
Yeah. Hit it one side and out the other, and it was armored piercing. It was set up for tanks, see?
Yeah.
Which, if it had been high explosive, it had blown us to 1,000 pieces, but it was armored piercing, and it went right through one side and out the other side. And it missed, you know, we were 3 or 4 feet away from it.
My goodness.
And it took Johnson's little finger off on the steering wheel. That was all that happened as far as he and I were concerned. But the point is, the 88 went right through the track.
Yeah.
And from that day on, we lost the track eventually. So, I mean, the track that I got pictures of now is a new track.
Really?
Yeah, we lost that track in the Battle of the Bulge, but it had this 4-inch hole on both sides.
For some time.
Well, as long as we had it, right. But those are just, those things, Charlie, is just, one thing happens after another. I mean, daily. Another time we borrowed a medic's Jeep to get some ties. We were digging in and going to make for our machine guns for protection at night.
Yeah. We
borrowed a Jeep and put ties up. A medic Jeep had a rack for the wounded, for what they call them, stretchers. For stretchers for the wounded. So we took this Jeep and went and got some ties to put in. We'd seen this pile of ties for protection at night, you know.
Yeah.
And the mortar started, and we hit head on with another Jeep.
Really?
Yeah, went flying out of the
no seat belts.
Jeep, and you know, got chewed out for using a medic's Jeep. But that's the way things went.
Yeah, you needed to do it.
But it's just always one thing after another.
Yeah.
I mean, all the time.
And did it run together? Or do you have like distinct memories of individual days, or was it just kind of a wash?
Yeah, there's just one after another.
Okay.
Just one after another.
Fair enough. I guess one of the other questions I have on here is, I'm sure you've heard the phrase "the greatest generation." I guess that comes from our feeling that everyone in the U.S. kind of got behind this and worked together, and it was a sense of good versus evil, which hasn't been really the case in any war since. Is that how you experience
I don't.
it?
Do you think the greatest generation is referring to the war situation or the general?
Well, I think probably a number of things. Like, certainly the war is part of it, and then also you guys coming back to the U.S. and really building up the economy and.
Yeah, kind of the way I see things right now and the way the country's going is, to me, the people that came to this country initially and formed it were great people. They all knew what they wanted for different reasons. A lot of it was the Reformation in Europe brought people here. They wanted the freedom of religion and the freedom of doing things. In this country, the people that came here were strong people from all the elements of Europe,
Yeah.
primarily. And I think the war brought out what this country, the First World War probably did it too, or started it. But what United States did for the world in both the First and Second World War, I think that typifies to me more of what the country is and the people that made the country
Yeah.
are than any other one thing.
Yeah.
The war is hard to understand. Very difficult to understand.
Do you feel like it? You certainly feel like it was justified in that case.
I do, from the standpoint that if you're going to try to visualize what might have happened if we didn't,
Yeah.
and that is almost impossible to visualize. But it's seemingly what the Kaiser and Hitler wanted to do was control, if not Europe, the world. I mean,
Yeah.
And I think today Europe is tremendously grateful for the United States, meaning France, England, all the countries, even probably Germany, if you want to be honest about it, are grateful for what we did.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know how you can explain those things.
Yeah, I can understand that. Do you have anything else on your notes or anything from that area? I mean, the questions I wrote down were just kind of a starting point, and I'm really interested in anything, any thoughts you have or experiences.
Well, it's every day. You can't believe the life of being a soldier, of what it is. you don't have showers, you don't eat right, you don't sleep right. You have lice around your.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, you wear all the clothes that you ever carried, which means
You never have a change of clothes.
no. Well, maybe every couple months somebody come through. And when the war got close to an end, they made showers out of German trucks and things, and would bring a shower truck up, and
Once they had extra equipment, I guess.
yeah, but you'd step into a truck that they made into a shower in the snow. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
That doesn't
and
sound
take a
very
shower
fun at all.
and step out, and the truck there with new clothes, clean underwear and everything would throw it at you. The guy standing up there, and as you came out, they just throw you, fit or not fit, they guessed.
Oh man.
Oh, that was standard. I mean, it only happened a couple of times, but most of the time you went without showers. I mean, you never changed your clothes. And we all had lights around our wrists, and
Yeah.
guys would use gasoline to
Cool.
kill them, and one catch a fire once in a while, standing against. I mean, the whole thing is so unrealistic that
Yeah.
you sleep any place you can find, in holes, barns, any place.
And you didn't have adequate winter clothing, did you?
They had what they had. I mean, it was compared to today, no, but it was all wool underwear. I mean, and
Yeah.
you know, but that's the way you existed. I honestly don't hardly remember how we ate. I have no idea
Really?
how we got by eating. K rations, and they gave you rations, but
There weren't enough.
we never ate an organized meal.
Yeah. You just catch meals, I guess, when you could.
The whole life is that way.
Yeah. Was it-
Sleeping, that's the machine guns. See, we're all out at night. You go all day, and then you go out at night for protection.
And they wouldn't have shifts or anything?
Yeah, we'd have 2-hour shifts. And if you were lucky, you got the late hours, because the first guys would go to sleep and never come in and wake you up.
Really?
Oh, I mean, you can't go all day.
Yeah, it just wouldn't happen.
And so they go to sleep out there on the guns. I mean, yeah, you know.
And the Germans weren't sneaking up on
Well,
you?
they did and they didn't. Like I indicated a little bit before, it makes you extremely independent. You take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, I didn't want anything out of the service. I didn't want any promotions or anything. I wanted the higher the rank you have, Charlie, up in combat, up through captain, the worse off you are.
Really?
Yeah. Any well, I mean, when I say captain, I mean captain of a line outfit. You know.
Yeah.
The responsibility and the danger of the position itself, I think, is almost according to the grade that you're at.
Really?
And I, being a private, a PFC, I never wore a stripe as long as I was in the service. Never wore a stripe, period. And I don't think there's any other soldier that could ever say that.
Really?
To my knowledge. Yeah, everybody wore it. And how they let me get away with it and everything is beyond me. I have no idea. But I never wore a stripe.
You just did not want to.
It wasn't, I was a PFC when we got overseas. And so, and then after the war ended, my first sergeant was a replacement that we got in our platoon.
Yeah.
And when the 14th came home, I told you we got sent to this artillery outfit.
Yeah.
And Harry Hicks was his name, and he was a replacement private in my platoon. And when we went to this artillery outfit, guys were being sent home. Of course, the guys with the most points in general were the guys with the higher rank.
Yeah.
They had worked up some, see.
You got points.
So these guys got sent home, and the openings were there for sergeants, everything. And we were sent to this, and Harry came in as a private. He was a PFC, and two of us were sent there. And the supply sergeant position came up, and Harry says, "Are you going to apply?" And I said, "No, I don't want it." I said, "I'm going to go home before you are." I said, you see if you can get it. So he got he was made supply sergeant.
Yeah.
Because the guys sent home so fast. So he went from a PFC to a supply sergeant. The next thing you knew, the first sergeant was sent home. So the first sergeant position was open. So Harry applied for that, and he was first sergeant. And I mean, this is how wild the situation was.
But there was no combat at that point.
No combat. It was all. But we moved from, they moved these outfits from one little German town to another. And Harry would call me in, and he said, "Dick, take 2 or 3 guys and go down to this town," and he'd call it, and set us up for, so I'd go to, being a combat versus artillery, you had different perspective on things.
Yeah, I would imagine.
To be honest with you. And I had no problem going, 3 times, we moved 3 times over there, and Harry sent me all 3 times to set up barracks and things in these towns for moving in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go to the Burgermeister, and I'd say, "Sprechen Sie English?" 9. I said, "Fetch Freihausen, sprechen Sie English?" A housewife, because there weren't any guys around to speak it. So they'd get a housewife, and I'd tell them, I said, "We're going to take these 5 houses right down here." I'd go in and I'd pick out the best places for our troops that I could see in the town. I mean, Charlie, this is where I say that it's hard to put things into perspective.
Yeah.
Because it sounds wrong in a lot of different ways. But it wasn't. But anyway, I'd say, I want those 5 houses, and I'd tell this housewife that, and I'd say, anybody that lives there can stay there. We're not going to kick you out of the house, but we're going to take over the house. And I said, and we'd go and we'd let them stay there if they want. And it was always a good deal for them, because by that time we'd have cooks come in
Really?
and they, make meals, and we were always good to them. And it got so they, but they were frightened to death when they initially did it.
Yeah.
But going to an artillery outfit that always being behind the lines, they didn't have the attitude that we had, of taking things over and saying,
Oh, really?
yeah, I mean,
They were less hardened.
yeah, I mean, that was just natural.
Yeah.
But those are little things that, but my point about it is I never wore a stripe because I'd go into these places, they didn't know what I was. I mean, if I put a stripe on, they knew I was a lowly PFC.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It served you well.
But I thought about that. I don't know why. It wasn't a thought out thing over there. It's just a happening. Yeah. So we got married in November of 50.
And Mom was born in what, like?
Well, see, we had Gary. He was our first.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born January of 52. And then Mark, and then Wendy, and then Pat.
A year apart?
But more like, roughly like 18 months to 2 years apart.
So basically like me and my sister.
What's that?
Same as me and my sister.
Yeah, kind of the same.
And I guess big families were, everyone had a big family those days, right?
Yeah. We didn't look at it as being a big family, but I guess four, yeah.
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 I guess it's just my generation. You think two these days. It's kind
Well,
of a big family,
that's true. That's true.
which is
Yeah.
different. And what was life like? Obviously, the economy was really picking up through there, right? Or
Well, life is interesting, Charlie, from the standpoint that we all go through totally different backgrounds growing up.
mm-hmm.
And going through the Depression and my folks, my dad, I can't ever remember getting $1 from my dad for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, he didn't have it back then. But the thing he did give me, I always had a job.
Really?
Even in the Depression, even as kids, I mean, I started peddling papers in the 6th grade, but we did all kinds of jobs in the summertime.
Just working through your dad?
Yeah,
your dad?
and you asked a question about why I got into engineering and things. Dad got me a job with a surveyor.
After college, or?
No, before college. Before college, the war had started, and Cleveland Construction Company came into Battle Creek to build a defense plan for Eaton Manufacturing. And the surveyor, Dad got me a job with a surveyor at, I was making 15 cents an hour at the drugstore as a soda jerk. And Dad got me a job with a surveyor for 25 cents an hour. And that was a terrific job. I'm not kidding.
Job, I bet, too.
But we laid out this defense plan for Cleveland Construction Company. And Cleveland Construction Company came in to start construction, and this is after the war had started.
Mm-hmm.
They made valves, sodium-filled valves for airplanes
Okay.
that made them cool faster. That's the sodium part of it.
Interesting.
So anyway, and Cleveland Construction came in and they asked the surveyor if they had anybody they could hire that was familiar with the points. That this was a big industrial plant and thing.
I see.
So he asked me if I wanted to work for Cleveland Construction, and my first answer was, "What does it pay?" and he said, "We'll give you 40 cents an hour." Well, I went from 15 to 25 to 40 cents
Wow.
in 3 or 4 months, you know.
What was minimum wage at that point?
Well, they didn't have minimum
really?
wage, I don't think, to my knowledge. I'm not up on this. But what's interesting, Charlie, is my Social Security card. I ran across it a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and it's got Cleveland Construction on it.
Really?
Yeah, I signed up for Social Security. I had to, I guess,
Yeah.
because my card says Cleveland Construction on it, and that's when I was a senior in high school.
Cool.
And that engineer tried to talk me out of not going back to high school. He wanted me to stay and finish the job.
Really?
Yeah, he did, which was not a very honorable thing for him to do in a sense, but that.
Well, I guess it spoke of
Yeah.
the job you were doing.
Yeah,
They
but
liked you.
but that's the reason I got into. I liked the engineering and surveying.
Yeah. It was fun work, so you did it after the war in college.
Yeah, and yeah, in fact, in high school, we had career day where local people came in and talked to students about their possible professions and things. And I was so into engineering by that time that I was on the student council in high school, and they had me introduce the city engineer to the prospective engineering students, whether it was civil or what. It was general engineering student. And I was that sure at that time that that's the direction I was going to go. And I never had any other interests professionally, you know. Yeah.
So, how was your career in engineering? Did you enjoy it?
I think it's great work.
Yeah. And did you build roads?
Roads, bridges. I worked 2 years with the Ohio Department of Highways in right-of-way.
Yeah.
And gave me a lot of surveying experience because we established all the easements and so forth for all new projects and dealt with the buyers, dealt with the property owners and things.
Yeah.
And it was always very interesting. But then I went on Ohio Toll Road, working for a Hardesty and Hanover consulting firm out of New York. And they had contracts with the Ohio Toll Road Authority. So I worked 2 contracts with them in Ohio on bridge work. And I was hired as a structural inspector because I didn't have any construction experience per se. And they were going to hire a construction engineer to be in charge, and the work started, and they never hired the engineer, and finally a guy came from New York, an engineer, and said, "We decided that you'll be the project engineer," because things had gotten started, and it was a good contractor out of Chicago, Bates and Rogers, and I'm sure they were satisfied, or they wouldn't have been able to that's the way things work.
Yeah.
You're working directly with them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was project engineer then on a bridge from beginning to end, and then when that bridge finished, why there was another bridge that was a separate contract. There were only 4 bridges on the Ohio Toll Road that were separate contracts. The others, they were all the big bridges. The others were all incorporated with the road contracts.
I see.
So I finished up the second bridge for Hardesty in Hanover. Then they sent me to Indiana as bridge engineer, and I worked the Indiana Toll Road and until that was finished, and then they wanted me to go to Connecticut or Buffalo, New York, or a job in the state of Connecticut. And we didn't want to move. By that time, we'd had a couple of kids and was expecting the third one.
So that was like mid-50s?
Yeah, right, exactly. So then we decided to settle, and I went to work for the state of Indiana as a project engineer and ended up engineering in charge of construction.
And you did that for the rest of your career?
Yeah. And that was roughly 30 years. It was just short of 30 years.
Good benefits from government work?
The indirect benefit was that I had a steady job in one location.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of opportunities out there to change especially in construction.
Yeah.
There's always jobs available and contractors and things. And but I started. I bought the land for Valley View, and since I had that, wanted to develop that, I was satisfied with staying in this location and working as a steady job with the state. And it all turned out to be a good situation all the way around, because I developed the property, and the extra income from that made things, a reasonable livelihood.
Yeah. And do you think, did you have anything to do with Uncle Mark getting into construction and contracting?
I'll tell you, Mark, I did the engineering, of course, on the subdivision, and Mark helped me, and I, doing the engineering for the state a lot and so forth, I was familiar with the way people work and how they produce and so forth. And Mark took to it real fast.
Yeah.
And he and I could stake out and do the subdivision work faster and better, as far as I'm concerned, than it could have been otherwise. And my point is, he went on with his work, and he's good at all that stuff, and he picks it up fast. And he's a very capable carpenter. He can do anything. I'm not that way. He's got ability way beyond what I ever had, as far as picking up and doing actual construction work.
Yeah.
And he enjoys it, and he's good at it.
What was the draw of engineering for you?
What was what?
What did you enjoy most about engineering?
Well, actually working for the government is not what I would call a real desirable aim.
Yeah.
But to me, I like the responsibility of being in charge of construction. And construction is the end product as far as the state's concerned. You have a lot of divisions, design and everything.
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it's bureaucratic, but when you get into construction, it's you either produce or you've got to produce.
Yeah.
You're with the contractors that's all they think about is producing.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, and they're good people to work with. I like working with crafts, and crafts people are good, solid people. A lot of them are crude and rough,
Yeah.
but
They're all.
but I appreciate their work ethics. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess changing the subject a little bit, I was kind of interested. Were you interested in like politics and world events?
Not in a big way. The thing that I hate to see the deterioration of governments throughout the world, the way that it seemed that it has developed in the last 10, 15 years.
Are you talking about here or worldwide?
Worldwide. Right now, I don't know if we're the leaders or if we're the result of it or what, but everybody is overspending. And I mean, all of Europe is the same way. Japan got in trouble earlier, and they're still trying to work out of it. And now our country is totally on a spending binge that just, frankly, I don't see any end result that can be good from it.
Yeah.
And I'm not an authority on it, and I don't have the answers, so it's hard to criticize something that you don't have answers for.
Yeah.
But
I understand. Like, for me, there's a few events, like, through my life that, like 9/11, I can remember exactly where I was and what was happening when that happened. What through the last 50 years has been like that for you? Like, what do you think has most obviously affected this country in your life?
well, of course, Pearl Harbor was the biggest thing, period, in my time. You know, the thing that, this is pretty simple in a sense, but the thing that is hard to understand for me, Charlie, is that all the major religions in the world have got the 10 Commandments. And how can all the major religions have the 10 Commandments and have the world problems that we have? And I'm not a religious person from the standpoint of studying the Bible, or, and I don't like to even discuss it because my knowledge is so limited. But I was brought up just going to simple Sunday school where we learned the 10 Commandments. And after that, we practically didn't go to church. But I've always, in a unconscious way almost, lived by the 10 Commandments. It's the basics. And I don't see how we can have these world problems with all the major religions having the 10 Commandments and not having more respect for your neighbor. It's just beyond me.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And And it's so simple, but it's hard for me to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you raised Christian Scientist, or?
No. No, we had good friends in Battle Creek that were Christian Scientists, so I was familiar with Christian Science. And of course, Gloria was raised that way. But she was not, we actually went to the Presbyterian church and got married Presbyterian church. But it wasn't, when we got married, it was just because it was available in Battle Creek.
Really?
I mean, I wasn't a Presbyterian member or anything, the family wasn't. But we did go to Presbyterian church here initially in Valpo, and then went to the Christian Science church.
I see. Did you meet Grandmary through the Christian Science
Yeah.
church?
Well, Ernest was. She married Ernest, and Ernest initially was, but once she got married, they raised their family as Christian Scientists.
If you don't mind me asking, how did it work out that you two got married? Because quite frankly, I have never heard.
Who, Mary and I, or
Yeah.
Gloria?
You and Grandmary.
Well, Mary had been a widow for 4 or 5 years. I don't know. I say 4 or 5. I'm not really up on it. It was at least that long, I think. And of course, we were close friends, family-wise, all the time. And then once when Gloria passed away, why, I don't know. It's not easy living by yourself.
Yeah.
And things. And I don't know, it was just kind of natural that we went out a few times, and it seemed like the right thing, and that's the way it ended up. And it was a long time friendship with no, you know,
Yeah.
the circumstances kind of developed to that's the way it ended up.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems like she's a pretty fun person to live with.
Well, the kids all knew each other. All 3 kids were in grade school all the way through high school. Not the same grade schools, but the same junior high and high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was all a friendly situation.
Cool. As far as like the Cold War, when did that really start, as far as you were aware?
Well, I think I'm not really too versed on that. I think it started pretty much after the Second World War.
Immediately.
And I think the appeasing the Russians the way we did, and I'd say that in as much as I think I'm probably not, I shouldn't mention this way because I'm not at all sure of it.
Yeah.
But Russia was a big factor in the Second World War. And you have mixed emotions about, I have mixed emotions about the of the objectives of the Russians.
Yeah.
At the time. And we gave them almost equal or equal credit for the Second World War and the way things were established. And it ended up that we had a Cold War with Russia. And I really don't have enough background on that to elaborate.
It didn't really affect your life very much, though?
Not really.
I guess I ask
because my life at that time, Charlie, was going to school and getting married, and you're totally preoccupied with your own thoughts, you know. And I didn't get involved with.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I guess just a little explanation, my personal education on the subject was...
You probably got more than I have.
Well, no, I just thought it was kind of more intrusive into everyday life of Americans. And one of actually my first memories ever is being here and watching the fall of the Soviet government on your TV.
Is that right?
Yeah. I still remember that very vividly. But I guess it just must not have been as big of a deal to everyone as...
Well, you know, the Berlin Wall and everything, it was a big thing, but as far as the political aspirations of it, I don't really, I'm not.
As far as experiences, memories through your whole life, what really sticks out for you? Could you even answer something?
What's really what?
What sticks out? What do you remember most often or fondly, or?
Well,
what's been most important to you?
I don't totally look at it as being the greatest generation, because I think the people are as great in before and after generations as they are my generation, as far as the people are concerned. I think the opportunities and the way of life that in my lifespan is probably as good and as great as you could ever ask for. We had the opportunities that this country offers is unbelievable compared to the rest of the world. Now, I'm speaking in general terms.
Yeah.
I mean, there are highly success stories throughout the world, but for the mass of the people, the opportunities are here. And I think it was more evident in our generation, because I can see a deterioration of that now. And that's what I don't like to see. I think the people themselves are as great as they ever were. And the people that made the country are fantastic people. They were the strength of a lot of other countries.
Yeah.
And it showed up, and it shows up. But socialism and government, is not a strengthening thing for society as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And I can see a deterioration of the way of life that this country offered for me.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I can definitely see that too. I think that it's going to prove out that it's very possible that I did live in the greatest generation.
But I don't think that that refers necessarily to the people as much as
The time.
the existing conditions in the country and what we've done for the world.
Yeah.
And to me, it's, if you think back, it's, excuse me, it's almost unbelievable that we'll go to war for the benefit of other wrongs that have taken place and for the benefit of other people.
Yeah.
And we do that without any real self-interest. I don't mean as far as being aggressor.
Yeah.
We do it more as a protection than as being an aggressor.